So as I said in the agenda point, we have added some real-time functionality to MDriven server and to MDriven turnkey. And real-time functionality within quotes, sort of. It's not like running on a microsecond level, but it's a good addition to the possibilities and the capabilities of the MDriven stack. And it helps out in a lot of design cases where you would need some kind of push of information. So I actually had a sample, a project that I did for someone else like a year ago or something like that. And I started that up again and added the real-time capability to it. And we're going to see how that looks. So I'm starting the MDriven designer from scratch. Making a point to show this just to so that everyone sees how accessible it is once you get it running. And once you're here, and if you have stuff on the portal, MDriven portal, you can just log in with your credentials here. And this project is called CFinder. I'm going to pick that as a work application and download that model from the server. Of course, I have it locally as well, and I have it checked into Subversion, etc. But this is one way to work with it. It's a really tiny example system that has the logged in user and has a concept of a channel which has messages, and the channel, the sys users can subscribe to the channels and the sys users can create messages. So it's a sort of a chat application. And if we start it up, we can see how that looks. So it's very rough and just a demo, and you start up with choosing whom to act as. There's a few names here which are the users. I'm going to be Hans. I'm going to pick a channel, channel 1. I'm going to open the chat channel. And now this UI pops up, which basically is a turnkey component which uses overrides to actually draw these things. But the view model behind this UI is this one, chat view. So what it's typed as a channel, and it shows all the users, or has a list with all the users. It has an entered text where you actually enter what you want to say, and it shows the list of the number of messages and a list of the messages, which shows the text and the username for the one that has sent the message, and the time, and a few styles as well. And all of this is just an override for the current messages. So that's this one, and that's probably having this Angular X component called chat. So if we have a couple of these, I guess I need to open up one that I'm gonna use the Edge browser to. And I guess you can enter this as well. I'm gonna paste the link into the chat channel here. And this is gonna act as Anders channel 1. So what we want to do, and what we had before adding this functionality of push notifications or the real-time functionality, was that the turnkey client used to pull the server quite often to see if there was any updated data. And what we've been able to do by introducing this new functionality is reduce that polling. So you can see that it's very quiet on the network. It doesn't say anything. So until we actually do something and we say hello one. And of course, as the client discovers changes to a control, some information is sent over the network. And when I push send, I immediately get it pushed to this other client, which of course also should be very quiet on the network. No one says anything. Everything is completely still until this one notices that I have written, then it sends stuff, of course. And when I actually send it, it pops up over here immediately. So what we need to be able to do in order to get this to come about is that the server need to be able to push information out to the browser. And browsers are normally just one-way communication. They can ask the server for stuff, but they can't do very much else. And how this is typically solved is by using WebSockets, which is a new protocol, or rather new protocol. And on top of WebSockets, there's a .NET package called Signal R for this kind of real-time communication. And that's what we have implemented to subscribe to some events that the server may send, and the server can then discover when things change quickly and update everything. So if anyone else would like to try to push information on, or if you're on a phone or anything like that, that should be fine as well. It will what happens is that the server discovers there's changes in one memory space that signals any other open clients and pushes that information with a signal to refresh. That ends up in the web client to refresh the data. Yeah, there it comes, cool stuff. And of course, this client has a lot to wish for. The UI isn't scrolling the way it should, etc. But we need to accept that for now.
Yeah. I have a question.
Yes.
Does this apply to server-side jobs too?
Yes. So basically anything that has this functionality turned on, and we're gonna see how that is done, because we basically don't want to have this on all our attributes in the model, because that would be wasteful to send signals back and forth whenever just anything changes. We need to be smart, as with everything that uses limited bandwidth, etc., to just use it sparingly to get the desired effect. And of course, as MDriven is high abstraction level, we would suspect that this is quite easy to turn on and to turn off. And what I did in order to make this happen is that I added one attribute called latest message, and that latest message is used by this view model column latest message. So send action actually sets this current channel latest message to datetime now, just before you save the message to the database. As the latest message is set, we have marked that as being a real-time attribute. You do that by setting a tag value on the latest message. So if we look up the tag values on these, you can see that it has real time set to true. And as it has that, it will immediately, whenever something is changed, when this attribute is changed, it will signal that this attribute is changed. And everyone else that looks at this attribute will receive the signal that just this attribute is changed, and it will then immediately invalidate that attribute. And as it has been invalidated in memory, other logic is discovering that we have something that is looked upon by a UI that is invalidated, and then it goes to refresh that and reloads that data from the database. And as that is refreshed on the server side, the turnkey client is signaled that the UI was refreshed. So there's quite a lot of things that happens in the background to give this effect. If we were to turn this off, I'm not sure, I'm gonna just delete this one and upload the new model to the server. Like that. And as I go here, I'm going to refresh this view because the application is restarting.
Well, posting from the outside world seemed to have worked anyway.
Yeah, good. So this is just using a web application on Azure with the lowest possible resource use. So if I go to, I'm going to be honest again, channel 1. This one is trying to reestablish. So this is and since we're not enabling the real-time attribute here, it will be the first thing I should say is that it's still quite quiet on the network, because that's a generic thing that has been added as a consequence of us implementing the real-time functionality. So that's a good thing that comes without any extra settings or additions. That's just the way it is from now onwards. But if I were to send data here, it won't immediately be discovered here. It will take up to yeah, let's see, it should be here by now. Now it came. So it took about 10 seconds or something like that. And of course, if you're doing your normal administration app, that might not be a problem, but in a chat app, that could be a lot of issues. And we have had this pattern before about assigning numbers from the server, etc., that has recommended a loop and periodic action with a refresh to minimize this kind of wait time. But that doesn't really scale all that well. It's much better to use the real-time functionality for this kind of behavior. So if we were to talk about a number assignment task, I would probably, if I design that today, still have a state machine that says if the number has been assigned or not. Still have a server-side job that discovers that it should assign a number from the server from one common source. But set the number and the state machine as real-time attributes. And that way the client doesn't really need to refresh anything. It will be automatically notified that things have changed. And this is, well, basically we have put it in automatically available in Turnkey, but working with the MDriven framework, there's a service that you install to get this up and running. And I haven't tried it, but if I connect the VPF prototype to this, and I guess I could be Hans here as well, channel at open chat channel. Yeah, now the UI looks like non-existent, but I guess I can take the auto forms.
Hans? Yeah, I just another question before. How about the async ticket feature for stepping a number? And that is also, I mean, that is a really fast way of getting things to run on the server side.
Yeah, so, and that's more of how you actually instruct the server to do stuff, and that could be very well combined with the not needing to have a server-side job even. You could just send in a method of an object to be executed. That's correct. We're going to show that some other time, I guess. Let's see. If
Because
I have
together it should be a really lean and fast way of getting the whole round tripping on setting the number, getting the feedback to the client with the minimal like overhead for the developer.
Yeah, so that's the basic idea here, that we could minimize or make development easier. Because this is a common task that we need to signal someone, we need to push to get something done now. No wasteful waiting. And that this is something that pops up everywhere, not just chat applications. It's and numbers assignments is one thing, but there's a lot of things that you want to ping pong back and forth between different clients. And when you have this functionality easily available, it should be quite commonplace to make use of it and to find benefits. But of course, it will take some getting used to, because it opens up new possibilities. So quite a simple feature to get up and running, but quite powerful to see the effect.
Hans, has this been also implemented in VPF, or is this a web-only feature?
No, it's available in VPF as well. So let's see if I do a
cross-platform thing.
Yeah, so if I do a copy of this view model. And I add an action to make this show. I guess I need to know how I made it show before. Okay, add an action here. So we're going to open up the other one, the copy, and on this one, I'm going to remove the. I'm going to do this on the right one so I don't mess it up too much. And this one is content overrides. I'm going to remove that. So if these are the messages, and I have the enter text and it was made not visible, and I have the users, it was also made not visible. I'm gonna put the enter text down here then, and the send action was also made not visible, like that. And if I were to play this in VPF, will this work? Yeah, I guess sort of. Hello, and where's the button? We have these rules that if you're placed to the bottom of the screen, let's see if that works. Okay, why didn't I get any messages? Hans, pick channel 1. Why did this get empty then? Okay, maybe
We're
this.
doing it now too.
What? Sorry, say again.
Yeah, was that when? Are you sure it was in channel 1?
Yeah, I think it was. Hello.
Yeah, and your post seems to pop up in the web browser tab I haven't
Yeah, okay.
opened.
So maybe.
It works that far. AAA and SSS just arrived.
Yeah, okay. Let's see then. If this was the current channel. So add column, generic column. Gonna show the current channel so I see if it works. Current channel dot name. So and refreshing. I think I know why. It's caching the view and one more shot. No. Okay. So I got those messages here, but the more interesting test would be if I get the messages back and if I get them in some reasonable time. So if I'm here and writing stuff here and send, I would expect, okay, it showed up there a bit slow, but that was probably
You removed the tag value.
yeah, you're right, I removed the tag value. So yeah, and if I'm gonna put it back I need to upload the model and then I've messed with the views, so not a good example, but you have to take my word for it. It will do fine to actually propagate into the VPF as well. But what happens in VPF is it's just this single thing that gets invalidated, and then this other logic that refreshes stuff that is shown on any view and happens to be invalidated. Then that will reload stuff. So it's a bit different.
I have a maybe off-topic question.
Yeah,
In this case, you use UE override, the chat component. If you instead have a grid and data is HTML, you can do the same thing.
Yeah, pretty much.
Is there any drawbacks?
No. So probably you could do most of these things with just CSS.
Yeah.
But at the time when I was challenged with doing this type of UI, my go-to place for these kind of things are just Googling the web to see if someone has done a template for this, and then just use the template to make it a component for turnkey. And we can have a look at how that would look. So let's see, what's it called now? Should be here, CFinder, and it's here in the chat. So this is the HTML for the chat, it puts the style information. It has the channels, it has the subscribers, and where it gets interesting is where it has the messages and where you enter the message to send. So this is probably just stolen from someone without much thought, and of course then replaced with the proper names and bindings, Angular bindings that matches the stuff in the view model. So that was just about what I had in mind to show you, a functionality that I hope you will find very useful, and that we could discuss on how to develop further. And one thing that has been in the back of my head as we did this is another type of real-time information sharing, and that is what like gaming data and things that that change extremely fast might need some kind of different round trip, and maybe never should be stored in the database as these things are. They are persistent. We wait until we save them and then we push the notification. But maybe there's volatile data that needs to be really, really quick, and that shouldn't be burdened by being saved. And my idea, and I haven't made any decisions and we haven't discussed it really much in the group, but let's bring it up now, is that if a persistent class like this channel would have a lot of, or at least one transient attribute, and if that transient attribute was to be marked as real-time, then we would discover every change on that and send a signal for every change on that, and not only notification that it has changed, but also send along the data from the transient attribute. And anyone that looks at the same persistent class, which we can identify by identity, will of course have a possibility to look at that same transient attribute, but since it's transient, there will be no value for it until they have entered it. But this kind of new real-time thing should push the value from another client into this client's transient attribute. And that would be a way to share fast data, like coordinates on a pen that you draw on the screen, or really fast coordinates that updates, and that you might not want to save every change. You might want to save a change each second or each minute, or whenever it settles, or things like that. But there's quite a lot of data that behaves that way, that's really, really quick, and you just want to snapshot it to save it whenever. And of course, since it's a transient attribute, it won't be saved at all, but then you could just have some action that copies the current value every 30 seconds and puts that in a persistent attribute and saves that. So that would be one way to, without much introduction of new concepts, still open up for direct communication between clients.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, if we use this chat application as an example, you might want to have like a typing indicator or
Yeah.
maybe even have what I'm typing show up in real time in the other clients, like the olden times when each character was sent separately. But you don't want to save all those things to the database, but when I actually click send, then the message I settled for after changing and deleting and changing my mind again might get saved.
Yeah, exactly.
If the transient attribute is a blob.
Yeah, exactly. So if it's really, really large, it won't behave as good because we would save it on every change. But still, it might be a good thing to be able to do that in certain cases because, well, this person uploaded a new photo. Okay, here's the new photo. Oh, there's another photo. It won't be a good way to send video.
Silly example, video frames from a surveillance camera, and you want to have a snapshot function. You have a guard sitting looking at that, and if he presses a button, then that frame gets saved, but the other ones just pass by.
Yeah.
I have a question regarding the difference in behavior now. That is the client not pulling the server anymore?
So since we changed the logic to avoid pulling and instead waiting for this push signal from the server, we have a fallback. It now in initial versions here we still pull each minute. Before we pulled each 8 seconds. Now we pull each 68 seconds because I just added a minute to it. But I think as what we have seen so far of the signal or functionality, that might not be necessary, and we're gonna see how it plays out. But maybe we don't even need to pull that often as 1 minute. In Azure you have actually or in Internet Information Server there's a separate setting or install that you need to add to have WebSocket available as a protocol from IIS and also on Azure. But if that's not available, the Signal R package falls back to different strategies to get the same functionality. It uses like long polls, like the client is open up a socket or a connection, a call to the server, and doesn't expect to get an answer. So it just sits there and holds it open until something happens, and then the server answers. And directly when the server has answered, it opens up a new one. So it always has one of these opens. But of course that's not as effective as a WebSocket, which stays open and you can ping pong back and front without opening new connections. But for our purposes, where we send very little information, we just say, now you should reload. It's really no difference. But if we talk about this new functionality where we should send data as well through the channel, then long polling would be a lot worse than WebSocket.
Okay. So currently there's no change in installation of the server?
No, so you don't need to change anything, and you can change to make the WebSockets available. And the only way you actually see any difference is by looking at the network traffic, and now you can see it has polled every minute when no one has been doing anything. And if WebSocket isn't available and it has fallen back to long polling, it will be one long line here parallel to the dots, and the long line symbolizes the open long pole. And that doesn't really cost anything.
So this is WebSocket
Yeah,
here.
yes.
Okay.
And yeah, if we wait long enough, we can see the WebSocket renegotiating and just checking that everything's okay and reconnecting, pinging. But that does that quite seldom.
So when can I start using this?
Yeah, now, since a week ago, so you can use it now.
Okay, so new deploy on the server.
Yeah.
Yep.
Pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's cool.
So we'll see how it takes off and if we're gonna update the recommendation on how doing server-side assignment of numbers, etc., and things like that, because quite a few implementations have been done by the old pattern, and we need to think long and hard before replacing the old pattern completely with a new pattern. But I don't see why we shouldn't now.
Yeah, this is excellent.
Yeah, very interesting.
And I suppose this could be used to keep two echo spaces in sync
Yeah.
with each other.
Yeah. So currently this functionality isn't really exposed outside the server. So within one system you can communicate freely, but there's nothing in this that actually communicates with others. Of course, you can have things to trigger when something happens, to send something to another system. That you can do.
Yeah.
And also the server-side jobs that are checked by polling and by checking the database, we're gonna introduce this kind of thinking there as well to enable it to relax and reduce the load on the server. It isn't much as it is, but it adds up if you have hundreds of different small jobs that should be done on a timely manner. It's a lot of work to do, and the sysasync ticket pattern that we introduced a couple of months ago really helps with that. But the sysasync ticket combined with real-time will help even further.
I guess this will work if you make an API, REST API with a view model.
Mm.
So if you have another technology calling into a REST API, that will show up right away on clients.
Yeah, and of course, and if that other technology also has some way to that we could signal it that it has gotten a signal, then we could have a UI that does that signaling to the other system, so that knows that it should pull some data. Maybe we could do some patterns going forward for exposing information like that to actually push information to someone else. But that's really up to the other party also to be able to receive the push.
Yeah, I'm thinking there, Hans, that you said that we can run server-side jobs maybe in the future because they're signaled. That I guess also that would mean that you could signal another system from your server-side REST call.
Yeah, of course. So there you could
solve that problem really, to just use to do REST calling immediately upon triggering any attribute change.
Yeah.
And you have also that, slightly that functionality with these, because have we shown that, or have you shown that when you can, I think you did, right? When you set up triggered server-side jobs that trigger on data change.
We showed the cache invalidation thing, yeah.
Yeah. And that is also quite powerful if you set up a thing, a view model that encapsulate all the data that you want to send changes for. And then that view model actions are executed, and you can then call another system and say to them, hey, this has changed. It's a really fast way of implementing change detection and updating another system mechanism.
So if you have an MDriven system being responsible for producing a lot of static HTML pages that's being displayed by some other web server for speed, and you make sure that you have cache invalidation to detect whenever data changes, and then you have the cache invalidation where you actually store the rendered XML or HTML that you're going to expose, and you mark that as real time, and then you push things immediately, that you would get very small times where you're actually saying the wrong thing on the external web server. Like the ones selling airplane tickets, they say the wrong thing the moment they have sold the ticket, because the pages hasn't been updated, and they update them, of course, often, but not often enough. And also banks are horrible like that. They say you can't see what's on your account until tomorrow. Okay. I wonder why that is.
So this scenario, you could have this subscribe view models and then you make a view model with the data that you want to present, or even the whole web page, and you make that in HTML, and then you use a reporting tool, a view model to XML, or view model, what's this operator called? Well, where you process XML or HTML.
Open document to...
Yeah, use that for HTML, and then you could actually render the pages immediately into HTML or XML from what you created, and then post that to the server. Yeah.
So, of course, if we want to scale a system like this to hundreds and hundreds of millions of users, then you probably would want to have a lot of static HTML within that system, and probably hundreds of simple web front ends, and it would be real easy to make sure that they fly in sync by using a strategy like this to subscribe to everything that is the core data, and that probably compared to 100 million change quite slowly, and whenever the 10,000 pages that change during a day can be distributed to the 100 web front ends, it will scale very well. But of course, that's one level above this kind of system building, to build an architecture for massive consumption, like a newspaper or something like that. not a failing newspaper, a very, very popular newspaper, like YouTube.
I want to go back to the chat use case. This is just a chat application, but if you want to put that functionality in any other application, then you have an icon to push to show the chat functionality.
Yeah.
It's what I think about is you have to put an iframe inside one of your static
Yeah, probably.
HTML to be able to pop up that view model
So
in another view model.
If it is the same system, of course you could have two different systems. One system with your stuff and one system with your chat client, and then you would merge them with an iframe. But if it's the same system, even it's probably an iframe to lift in a completely different view model in the bottom right of your other pages, and you would have.
So that's the way to integrate.
Yeah, I think so. Spontaneously.
The same view.
Yeah. I think that's the best way to. Rather that than adding the UI to each view where you want it, it would be cumbersome.
Yeah.
All right, we're running out of time, but hope you enjoyed the new functionality, and it will come to use sooner or later. And see you next time in 2 weeks. We'll think of something new to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.